I'm Chris Bryant, CCIE number 12933, and welcome to part 2 of the Cisco Certification Video Practice Exam, where today we're faced with a configuration challenge involving Telnet passwords and privilege levels. Now, in part 1 of this two-part series, we did some Telnet review. We looked at a possible solution for the scenario that I'll bring right back up here on the whiteboard in just a moment. So if you haven't seen part 1, I do invite you to go check that out, whether on YouTube, on my blog, or another video sharing site. But if you haven't seen it yet and you don't see it on the site that you're on, don't worry about it. We'll bring you up to speed here in just a moment with the scenario that we're facing. And again, we have to get used to this kind of thing because, of course, in the exam we're going to see scenario-based questions, but as I say, in the real world, the entire network is a scenario-based question. So here's what we're looking at. We have a scenario where we want to allow 3 separate users to telnet into our router using the combinations that you see on the board, the username password combinations. We want the admin user to be put straight into enable mode upon a successful login, a Telnet login that is, and the other user should be placed into user exec mode. So if you haven't done this yet, pause the video, write it out on a piece of paper, put it in Notepad, one or the other, and come up with your solution, and then let's see how we would tackle it on live equipment, which is where we're going to go now. Now, I have removed the Telnet config in the previous lab, so now we're looking at the default line VTY04 and nothing underneath. So before we start there, let's go back to router 1 and make sure that we have connectivity, and we do. And if we try to telnet at this point to that address, of course we get this that we would expect. There's no password set, and it is required, thankfully, so we would not be able to telnet in at all. Now, what we tried before was putting a password and the login command directly on the VTY lines. And we talked about what we have to watch out for there as far as the enable password goes. We also put privilege level 15 on there so that a user who telnets in is put directly into enable mode, but that's not what we want to do here. That would let everyone into enable mode, and I'm not that crazy about doing that in the real world anyway. So what we want to do here is set this admin account up so whoever has that password, username password combination, goes straight into enable mode. The other users go into user exec mode. We can do that by creating a local username password database on router 3. And if you've never created a database before or the word intimidates you, don't worry about it. It's as simple as it can be, and we're going to start that right now. I'll go ahead and use the cap there. Now that's our tech user and our user, but now we want to set up an account password, username and password combination, where that person goes straight into enable mode. We do that with the privilege 15 command, but watch the syntax of this. It's a little tricky at first. And we'll make that a capital letter, because this is what I've done more than once. You go, okay, username admin, password business, and then you get out here and you're trying to put the privilege level in and you can't do it. What you've got to do is put that in the middle of the entire command. And let me show you an iOS help. And again, don't worry about all this. You don't need to know all these yet. But the one that you should be familiar with is setting the user privilege level. And that's what we're going to do here. Same range, 0 through 15, we're going to set it to 15, and then we're going to set the password after that. Just one of those things you have to watch out for, because it's just human nature to want to put the privilege level at the end of the command, or at least it is with me. So let's put password, and we will put business for that. So we'll go ahead and do a quick save there, but you're not done. Now we've created a username database, but now we've got to tell the VTY lines, hey, when somebody tries to telnet in, don't look for a password here on the VTY lines. Instead, go out to this database on the local router. And we're going to do that with one little extra word. Let's go to the VTY lines. we need to use the local option here. And where it has local password checking there in iOS help, all that means is look to the local username password database to allow the user in or not let them in. So we're going to put login local there, and then that's it. That's the end of the command. You do not put a password directly on these VTY lines, not if you're using a local username database. So let's go back out to router 1, and what we'll do now is try to telnet in as each one of those 3 users. Now before, we weren't even prompted for a username in the first part of the lab. We were just asked for a password. So let's try telnetting in now and see what happens. And now we are prompted for a username. And note that the username is going to appear, but the password does not. That's what you should expect. It's a little odd, but that's what you should expect to see. And it was successful, but note that I am in user exec mode right now. And that's what we wanted to do. That's the default. And since I didn't set an enable password, this user literally cannot get into enable mode. They can't really change anything. So we'll log out of that connection, and now let's try that username, username. And I'll type in user, watch your caps, and I'll put in the password for that command, for that username. And again, I'm put into user exec, and I literally cannot get into enable mode. So this is a good way to allow, say, a tech support person to come into your router, maybe run some basic show commands, but you don't want them changing anything. This is how you can set that up. So let's go ahead and log out of that Telnet connection. And I want to show you real quick what it looks like if you put in the wrong password. And what I'll do here is open the Telnet connection back up, and I'll put in tech, but I'll put in tech for the password as well. And it's just going to say login invalid, and then it's going to keep prompting you for another try. So you do get a couple of tries there. Now let's try telnetting in as that admin user and see what happens. And notice that when I entered the correct password, which again you're not going to see any asterisks, you're not going to see anything, this time we were put into privilege mode. We were put into enable mode immediately. And that all goes back to putting that privilege 15 command in the middle of that username password entry in the database for that particular user. So that's a way to tie your Telnet access down just a little better. It's important for your exam and the real world to know how to set up, as I call it, the one-size-fits-all password. Remember that, where you just put login and then you put the password right after that? But that's not terribly secure, and if you put privilege level 15 on the VTY lines, then anyone who happens to know that password is going to be able to come in and really work on your router, and maybe you don't want that. So this is a much more effective way of tying down your Telnet access, where some users can get in but can't really change anything, and then you've got an admin account or whatever you want to call it that can change something thanks to that privilege 15 command. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch both parts of this particular video. Hope you enjoyed it. We've got well over 100 free videos here on YouTube and coming to our new on-demand webinar site as well. I invite you out to our blog, theBryantAdvantage.blogspot.com, for more details on that, fully illustrated tutorials, free webinars, and a lot of great stuff coming up. Again, thanks for watching this video. I'm Chris Bryant, CCIE number 12933.